to Tuesday of Holy Week. I hope you've been enjoying our baking so far. We've got a good one for you today. Now, hopefully you remember yesterday we were making Rocky Road and talking about Jesus cleansing out the temple. But Jesus didn't only smash things up in the temple, he also returned later to teach the people who were in it. And one of the things that he spoke about was the law. The law was a really important thing to the Jews. They had lots and lots of laws that they had to follow to make sure that they were right with God. And so Jesus came back and he summed up the entirety of the law with two simple and easy to remember ideas. Love God and love your neighbour. Very, very simple, but not so easy to do in practice, as I'm sure you'll agree. So today we're going to be making some heart-shaped biscuits to remind us of Jesus' summary of the law. Love your God and love your neighbour. So I've got all my ingredients sprayed out again already. I've already washed my hands, so let's have a go. To start off, you're going to need, got my ingredient list over here, 90 grams of butter. I'm using margarine at the moment. If you are using butter, just make sure that it's at room temperature, otherwise it won't be soft enough for you to work with. So 90 grams in there, and 175 grams of caster sugar. So we're going to pop that in as well. And by creaming our butter and sugar together, this is why you need the butter to be nice and soft, because otherwise it gets very hard. Now I'm going to be using an electric whisk because it's a lot easier and quicker. If you don't have one, don't worry at all, because you can do it by hand and it's not too difficult at all. So we're just going to be mixing in so it's nice and soft, and the sugar is fully incorporated into the butter. Then we're going to be adding in the rest of our wet ingredients, which is 2 eggs, making sure you don't get the shell in. If you do get any in, the easiest way to get it out is by using another piece of shell to scrape it, because otherwise it will slip out of your fingers. So we've got two eggs. We're going to need a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm just going to put it onto a tablespoon, but you measure it out properly. There we go. That'll just give it a bit more of a flavour than just sugar, which is nice. So I'm going to mix those together and make sure that the eggs are fully incorporated into the butter. We've got a nice wet mixture there now. So we're going to add in our dry ingredients. So for the dry ingredients, we need 200 grams of plain flour. Just checking I don't need any baking powder. No, 200 grams of plain flour, which is there. And we're going to sieve that into the dry ingredients. There we go. You can do this in batches if you find it easier, and particularly if you're not using a whisk. So actually, always get a little bit messy at this point. So although I whisked it with the cream and the sugar, when you get to this stage, it's actually easier to switch to a wooden spoon, because you're going to end up with a dough at the end of this, and it's very difficult to whisk a dough. So I'm going to take my hooks out, make sure that all the mixture has come off them, and put those to the side to clean up. Get my wooden spoon, and I'm going to fold the flour into my wet ingredients to make a nice dough. There we are, it's coming together nicely. Now, as you can tell, that's still looking very wet. So what I'm going to do is get some more plain flour and keep adding it until I've got enough of the dough to be able to, well, to roll out. A bit more in. So at this point, I probably used more like 300 grams than 200. So I will change the recipe at the beginning of this video in case you notice the discrepancy, to give a bit more flour in there. There we are. So I'm probably going to do it now because that's looking a lot better. So the other method that you have for helping it firm up a bit is to leave it in the fridge for a bit. So you can either leave it in the fridge at this stage when it's a ball of dough, or you could roll it out into a line and use it then. So I'm going to be putting this dough into the fridge for half an hour to let it firm up a little bit more and come together a bit more. Just use my hands for this final bit to put it all together and check we're getting on okay. So it's still going to be a little bit sticky, but that's fine because when you're rolling it out, you're going to be putting some more flour onto your rolling mat. But the point is it's staying together a lot better now, and a bit of time in the fridge will help that to firm up even more. So we're going to leave it in the fridge for half an hour, and when I come back, I'm going to need to preheat my oven to about 180 degrees and get myself a heart shape of some variety to roll out my heart-shaped biscuits. So I have got a heart-shaped cookie cutter right here. This is actually a sandwich cutter, to be honest, so it's quite big. If you don't have a heart-shaped cutter yourself, don't worry. You can make yourself a template, either by drawing around a piece of paper, drawing a heart shape and cutting that out and just using that. Or if you want something that lasts a little bit longer, you could cut round a piece of cardboard, like a cereal box, make that into a heart shape, and then put some foil on top. And that will help it to not stick so much. You've made your own heart cutter then, which is very exciting. So make it as big or as small as you want, not too big because you want to get a few cookies out. So yeah, in the next half an hour, we are going to chill our dough, preheat the oven, and roll out and get ourselves a heart cutter. So I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, welcome back. So my dough has been chilling in the fridge for half an hour. I've just pulled it out and put it onto a floured surface here. You need to make sure that when you're working your dough, you do it quite quickly, because otherwise it's going to warm up and it's going to get all sticky again. It's quite a warm day here today, so if it is warm, just be a little bit careful of that. If you need to pop it back in the fridge, then you can do that at any point. It's a little bit noisier here now because I have a small person playing with a very loud toy in the corner there, so we'll see how we get on. So what you want to be doing with your dough is just making sure it's nice and smooth and pliable for you. Keep it on that floury surface and it will stop it getting too sticky. And then so we're going to be rolling it out. I've got my nice rolling pin here and using our cutters or our templates to make little hearts. There we go. As it comes, you want it about 5 millimeters thick. If it gets too sticky on that side, to turn it over and make sure that surface stays floured. And when you're rolling out your hearts, make sure that you do them in pairs. You'll find out why later on, but you want to make sure that you've got an even number of hearts for this one today. So there we go. sure it's nice and even all the way across. You can just go straight onto your work surface. I just find that this is a little bit easy to clean up afterwards. So I can feel that it's a bit thicker in the middle there. Alright. And I've got 2 baking sheets behind me, which are prepared with baking paper, so that when the shapes are ready, they're just going to pop onto the baking paper. So that's all rolled out. Get my enormous heart cutter, and I'm going to get as many as I can out of the single sheet before I re-roll it, because I want to re-roll it as few times as possible. So remember, I've got my little mini one here, and in the spaces I've got left, I can just cut through a few mini ones. There it comes. To make the most of the mixture. You don't have to do the mini ones. I have, like I said, a small person. I just know that the small ones would be really good for distracting her from trying to eat the whole one. I don't want to do too many minis though, because I want to be able to roll it out and see if I can get another pair of those big ones. So I've got a little bit stuck. Right, let's do one more there. And then I'm gonna get the bits up. There we are. Heart comes away. And I'm going to carry on rolling and re-rolling until I've got a tray full. So as you can see, that little bit of dough has gone a long way. I have 3 trays ready to go into the oven. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 pairs of big biscuits and quite a few little ones. I could have done some more little ones, but they ran off with my cutter, so we got stuck with those. If you haven't got enough room for them in the oven in one go, don't worry. You can keep them, just chill them in the fridge until you're ready to use them, and then pop them in the oven when you're ready. Just make sure the oven's nice and hot, ready for them to go in. So you're going to be popping them into the oven on 180 degrees for about 10 minutes. But keep checking on them. You don't want them to go too brown. But don't worry if they don't feel necessarily very solid when you take them out, because they will continue to get more solid as they cool. So pop them in the oven, and we'll see you again in 10 minutes or so. Bye. Welcome back. I hope you have got your biscuits out of the oven. The afternoon got away with me a little bit, so mine have come out of the oven and they've cooled and they're waiting here for me. So they went in the oven for at 180 for 10 minutes. They weren't quite done, so I gave them a couple of minutes more. And now, as you can see, they are out of the oven, nice and thin, and we've got lots of pairs here. So next up, what we're going to need is some icing. Now I'm cheating a little bit and I'm using a pre-made icing, just because I had it lying around, but I thought it would be a good idea to use it. To make your own icing, you just need to get some butter or margarine and some icing sugar. Grab yourself a couple of nice big tablespoons of butter, put them in a bowl, and then sieve in icing sugar a little bit at a time, mixing in as you go until you've got a nice thick icing. And you can, as we're doing hearts, maybe colour it pink with some pink or red food colouring, and then we'll be good to go. So I'm using this chocolate one, so not the right colour, but it will taste nice, so that's the main thing. So like I said earlier, you're going to need your hearts in pairs, and the reason for that is that we are going to be joining them together to make little kind of heart sandwiches like that. So as we started, we thought about how Jesus simplified the law into love God and love your neighbour. So as we stick them together, I will start doing now to demonstrate, you can imagine sticking the 2 halves of the same law together. So one side of the biscuit is love God. That's going to be the side that I'm sticking the icing onto. So we've got love God and stick it together with love your neighbour. And then we've got a nice little heart sandwich. So you can carry on with the rest of them. Love God and love your neighbour. And that's a really important thing to remember for this Holy Week and for the whole of Lent, really. That the most important things we can do and the best way that we can live our life is to love God and love our neighbour. And by doing this, we live in a way that we don't hurt anybody. We always do what God wants us to do. It helps us to make the right choices, and that in the end helps us to have a happy, healthy life. So we've got our biscuit sandwiches, love God, love your neighbour. So I'm going to carry on finishing these. As you finish yours, have a cup of tea or coffee or hot chocolate, a drink while you're eating your biscuits, and maybe you could have a chat with your family or friends, either where you live or on the computer, about how you can keep both of those laws, loving God and loving your neighbour. What does that look like for your life? I've got lots of my little hearts ones here, so I'm going to be sharing these with Charlotte. But with my biscuits, we're going to sit and think about how we're loving God and loving our neighbour this Holy Week. So we will see you again tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it again. Have a good evening.